I've been thinking about sex, as I do occasionally, and there's a couple of things. There's a few things I'm thinking about it, and the main thing I'm thinking about it is why nature has made sex so enjoyable and so desirable. So initially, I'm thinking that nature clearly wants people to be having sex often and wanted people to be craving sex so that sex would happen very often. Now, I don't know when we worked out that sex was the reason women got pregnant and the reason women had babies. I don't know how we worked out that link such a long time ago. So, nature wants people to be having sex and a woman to become pregnant even when it wasn't intended. That's why nature's made sex so pleasurable and desirable. Um, so that people would have crave and the pleasure of sex and would have sex for the pleasure. And so women will become pregnant even if the sex wasn't intended to produce a pregnancy. So nature wanted people to be having children even if unintended. And so it made sex pleasurable so that people would crave sex and would have children even if children were not the intention of having sex. So I'm wondering if that's the reason why sex is so pleasurable. Um, Nature wanted children to be born with a certain number, certain regularity. So if sex was just a functional activity, like cutting your hair or whatever, no pleasure associated with it. If it was just an activity to produce children, maybe there wouldn't be enough children born and there would be a problem. And so it seems as if nature has deliberately made sex so pleasurable so that enough children would be born and that children would be born even when children were not intended and possibly not wanted at all. But nature wanted babies to be produced regardless of intent. So that's why sex is so pleasurable. So I have been wondering why or how many children who were born, how many were intended and how many unintended. So we'll look into the statistics as to what the intention was in having sex, how many children were intended to be produced, and how many were incidental, unintended. So we'll look into that. But I suspect that a certain number of children need to be born with regularity to keep the human race functional, to keep society stable. So there'll probably be a problem if not enough children were born. So I'm wondering what the minimum number of children is required by society. And I'm wondering that if not enough children were being born, would the government do things to encourage people to have sex? Maybe tax breaks or some kind of incitement to have children or to have sex that would then lead to more children. So, sex is not an ordinary activity, it's a desirable activity. So I'm thinking that in my own case, I haven't had sex for years, I think. But I'm glad to find that it's not a problem for me. I don't crave sex as I once did. I don't see it that way anymore. It's just a thing, and it's a nice thing, but I'm not fussed about not having sex. I'm glad that it's not a problem because I'm not able to have sex now. So it's quite interesting how I don't regard sex so highly as I once did. It's probably because I'm old now, I'm 49, and I've been there and done that, and I've had children already, so maybe that's the reason. Because I've had children, their sex drive isn't needed so much anymore. Because I've been used to produce children, or sex has been used to lead to children. I'm also wondering how we worked out that sex led to children. How did we realize that a man and a woman having sex is what the reason that women became pregnant? How did we realize that when pregnancy could have happened without sex? It's interesting to wonder how we understood that a man made a woman pregnant with ejaculation. How did we realize that that was the reason women became pregnant? Why did we not think that pregnancy was just an occurrence that happened regardless of sex? So how did we know that a man made a woman pregnant? It's interesting to know how we worked out so many things about life. How do we know one thing led to another? For example, how did we know that cleaning our teeth was an important thing to do and would prevent problems with your teeth developing? Because it's not automatically obvious why having clean teeth is necessary. Because a lot of the things that could damage teeth are very small bits of food that's stuck in between the teeth. They're not some big obvious problem. I don't know how we understood that keeping clean teeth wasn't a very important thing to do in life. So I'm wondering quite a few things about how we worked out things in our life that we regard automatically now. For example, cutting hair, for example, how did we realize that we could safely cut our hair? How did we know that that wouldn't be a big problem for us? Because getting sharp scissors and cutting parts of our body is a big deal. So how did we know we could do it without there being a problem? It's really strange. And what else is there? And cutting fingernails as well is another thing. Because we're using very sharp implements to cut parts of our body. And that is quite a big deal. And then I'm thinking about circumcision. Why did that horrible, unnecessary procedure be invented? How could it have been dreamt up? Why would we even imagine doing such a horrible, hateful thing to men? It is an evil procedure, very harmful to men, and it's just wrong to be doing circumcision. But for some reason, we created the procedure and we do it. I don't know how much circumcision happens nowadays, but it is evil and horrible, and it should not be done. And it should be illegal. I don't know why it's allowed at all. It's a horrible procedure. So I'm lucky that my dad didn't circumcise me because he was circumcised. And so why didn't he have me circumcised? I would have thought it'd be automatic. But my dad had the wisdom to not circumcise me, and I'm so grateful for that. But I'm surprised at the same time. I just think it's strange how he didn't have me circumcised. And it's just really good that he didn't. But he would have normally. So I'm just very grateful. And it made me understand and wonder about it and see how it's an evil procedure and shouldn't be done. It shouldn't be inflicted on men. What else am I thinking? So I'm wondering, I think I mentioned already, why did nature make sex so desirable? Why isn't sex just like cutting your hair or something? Just an ordinary activity with no pleasure associated with it. Because sex doesn't need to be pleasurable in order to work. But nature wanted people to be craving sex and having sex and producing children, even if children were not intended. So there must be some number of children who need to be born in order to keep society stable. There needs to be a certain birth rate sustained, and so that's why nature made sex so desirable. And nature didn't care if people didn't want to have children or didn't intend to have children. I wanted children to reproduce anyway. I'm wondering also how we understood that cutting hair and nails wouldn't be harmful to us. How did we know it was okay to do that? Like, who imagined getting sharp implements to cut nails and hair without thinking we were damaging ourselves? So it's strange how we worked out that it was okay to do that. And I've said that circumcision is evil and shouldn't have been created. And I can't understand how we ever imagined it would be a good procedure to do. It doesn't make sense. It wasn't might as well cut our toes off or something because they're aggravating or whatever. Foreskin is essential, and circumcision is completely wrong to inflict on men. What else am I wondering? I suppose I'm wondering why we sought to keep ourselves clean. How did we realise that showering and using soap to clean ourselves, how did we realise that was necessary and worthwhile? How did we understand that keeping clean was a good thing for health and well-being, whatever? There's a lot of things that humans do, I suppose. Like brushing teeth, I think I mentioned. It's not automatic that we would realise that keeping clean teeth was a good idea. How did we realise it was necessary? So how did we understand that not having clean teeth would lead to gum problems and whatever? Because it's not obvious how food could lead to damage to teeth, little bits of food. There's a lot of things, I suppose, that humans do and humans understand. And I have been thinking about how we learn to cut hair and nails. I think I mentioned this already, but it's not obvious how we can take a sharp implement and cut parts of our body without there being a problem. And cutting hair is a big deal. And so how did we know when we first started? How did we know we would grow back? Because it could have been permanent. So it's quite a big deal. And I'm wondering about shoes as well, I suppose. There's a lot of things that humans do and have learned how to do that are very useful in our life, like shoes are very useful. But it isn't obvious that we would create shoes. How did we understand that we could create objects to put our feet into and wear these objects all day? It's not obvious to do this because animals don't do this, so we have nothing to learn from. It is strange how humans solve problems of all types with genius, basically. And it is very impressive. I'm thinking what else I'm wondering. As as opposed to medical things and classes is another thing. How did we understand we could change how light entered the eye and make us able to see? I don't understand how we ever realized that we could change light entering the eye so we could see clearly. Because I don't think it's obvious really. Yet we learned how to do it. And it's obviously men who made this advance. It is in the nature of men to be inventive and to solve all kinds of problems, more than women. Women have a different role in life, and it is just the way it is. And there's no comparison of worth or criticism. It's just the thing. Men are more inventive than women, and that's how it is. There are odd women, certain women who have achieved a lot in history, but I'll be frank, the recognition of these women is deliberate to make women feel better, to be more seen as being fair. Realistically, our advances in technology have been produced by men almost exclusively, but women have contributed, but very rarely. And the only reason we know the names of these women because there's so few compared to the number of men. The only reason we know the names of these women is because lots of effort has been made to emphasize these women, so that women have more prominence in our recognition of historical figures. They have more prominence than they warrant, than they should have. And the only reason we know famous women in history, because there's so few, we know them because efforts have been made to make them prominent, more prominent than they would receive otherwise, more recognition than they would receive otherwise. So it's just a thing that I've noticed, and it's not a criticism, it's just a thing. But it is strange how men are more inventive, more productive than women, more energetic, more industrious. And as I said, this is not a comparison of worth or anything, it's just a thing. It's how it is. And I will cover this more, I think, in time. But I think I'm done now.